Morning everybody, it's Thursday morning at 10 a.m. and the last session is due to go out tomorrow, the fourth principles approach to ethical reasoning. A little late this week, so I haven't got that much in the way of reply, except to tell you, someone who hasn't appeared much in the discussion so far, MC, has, well, you know when you're watching a horse race, and some horse comes from the back and zooms up right ahead of the ones that have been plodding along. MC is what you might call a thoroughbred in that department, because he's really, he told me he would. He told me that there were reasons why there'd been no contributions to the discussion, but now I'll start. And he must have done nothing else for a week, because it's been not just... So I'm going to direct my remarks to MC to this week. So well done, mate. Well done. Gillick competence. Yeah, you've got the general sense of that, really. I mean, this is how far it goes back. Yeah, you got the general sense of all that, and you were talking about, like, you also got a good sense of how it comes about that a person can be judged competent to consent for medical treatment, but not competent to refusing. That it's often a matter of life and death refusal, whereas the going without your parents' consent for treatment is often more lightweight stuff. And you're a bit of an extremist, if you don't mind me saying so. There is advocating, well, not advocating, but certainly arguing that consent to sexual acts for 14-year-olds is justifiable in his view, providing that the person's making their own mind up and they aren't subject to extraneous pressure. Yeah, okay. I mean, you know why I put that in. You know why I put that question in, because, you know, this is a very charged subject, and even where you think that sexual relations between 4-year-olds or with 14-year-olds and someone a bit older is justifiable. I wonder what you'd say. I wonder what your opinion would be about homosexual relations, because as far as I understand it, there's quite a distinction drawn between consent for normal heterosexual sexual acts and homosexual sexual acts. And it's often to do with that the young person might be led astray, or might have their head turned at an unfortunate moment. I wonder if you'd push your argument that far. Okay. Another thing that MC mentioned this week was that there was a problem with the drop box. Okay, the essay box. What I've done is I've taken the damn thing down and I've reattached it to the module. Have a go. I love it the way he says at one point, when I asked the question in the triage lesson about have you ever refused someone access to the ambulance. I love the way he says he has refused access or would have liked to. Well, I never quite got the sense of that. You know, what were you actually saying? Were you saying that you did, or were you saying simply that you would have liked to? You know, because there's quite a distinction to be drawn there, isn't it? My guess from the sense of the rest of the things that you've been saying, all of you throughout this entire module, is that the safest thing is to bung someone in the ambulance and to get them off. And therefore, I'm a little sceptical about the idea that, MC, you might have said to someone, you're not getting in, beat it. And I think that it's much more likely the case that you've wanted to say you're not getting in, but didn't quite have didn't quite feel like you had the authority to do it. And, you know, the thing that comes across from your submissions, Mr. MC, is that in quite contrast to meeting you, it struck me that for instance, Nobody else in the discussion described the paramedic service as, I've made a note of it here, bottom of the crap pile. And that's quite an extreme. I think that's quite an extreme statement. But then again, I understand the frustrations of all of this. This must be a really frustrating situation to deal with. You mentioned the fact that somebody will be stood there with a very minor injury, surrounded by their friends, and as they get into the ambulance, so one of the friends will say, "I'll follow you on in the car," like they couldn't have took him in the first place. And and I had to chuckle when you were saying that, frequently you get people and you take them along to the hospital and they say to you, "Well, how am I going to get home?" Like it's your problem, In France, it's part of the duties of the ambulance service precisely to take people home after they've been in hospital. Isn't that incredible? And they have specially designated kind of taxis, really. They're described as ambulances, but they are, in fact, rather more like taxis, and they bring people to outpatient appointments and all that sort of stuff. And the healthcare professionals in France really question whether or not this is a justifiable way to spend healthcare resources. And, you'd have to sympathise with that, wouldn't you? Imagine that. Imagine if it was part of the ambulance service's job to ferry people to and from hospital. I mean, fair enough if they can't get to hospital, that's one thing. But no, that's not it. This is where people have had a bit of an appendix taken out. Now then, where's the ambulance? I need to go home, and they're 23. Going over the page, you made an interesting point there, MC, that there has got to be some relationship with honesty and truth telling, the information that you give to the patient and the severity of the condition. If it's not a very severe condition, you're arguing, then come with me, you'll be better off if you do. If on the other hand the person is saying that they're going to look after the dog while they've got chest pain, then precisely in those situations, maybe you need to give them a bit of honesty, like a punch to the chin. Look, you might die if you don't get in the ambulance now. I never thought of it that way before, to be honest with you. I didn't. There they are with chest pain, and they get along to hospital, still very sceptical about whether or not they may have had a heart attack, even though you've got the ECG in front of them pointing to ST elevation. They may still be very sceptical about whether or not they are as sick as you make out. And then they get to hospital, and there's the well, not so much nowadays, of course, with PCI, but certainly in the past, the person who's going to be administering thrombolytics has to say to the person, A, it is beyond doubt that you've had a heart attack. B, we need your consent on a form for me to give you this clot-busting agent. And C, one of the things that you should know is this might give you a stroke. Now you've gone from honesty, patient in denial, doesn't want to get in the ambulance, to, and within, 10 minutes, to this drug I'm about to give you is such a serious business that you might end up being stroked as a result. I mean, as a gradient into, from, how am I going to break this subject gently to the person, to you need to take account. There can be very few situations where things get so serious so quickly. And there isn't a thrombolytic nurse that I know in the accident and emergency department that hasn't had the experience of watching a fella's face collapse after they've administered the thrombolytic agent. Very well done. One last thing before I go. I am compiling all of your replies to these emails. I'm compiling them into different folders corresponding to the different lessons that we've had. I will show you them all before we finish. I want your permission to hold on to them. See you next week, everybody.